Hi, this is Stephen Lynn, the principal of Fort Seller Elementary School. This segment is just to announce to you guys that due to a lot of requests recently that we will begin or restart our daily mindful minutes, which we will pre-record and post on the Fort Seller, Principal Fort Seller YouTube channel. We also felt like this was a great opportunity to talk a little bit more about the Mindful Minute, what mindfulness is, and not just hear it from me. So today we have with us Mr. Jamie Reygle. He is the Executive Director of Instill Mindfulness of Southwest Virginia. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really honored that you would come in over Zoom from 2 states over. But can you tell us a little bit about your organization, Instill Mindfulness, and the work that you guys do in the schools in rural Southwest Virginia?
Certainly, and thanks so much for having me, Stephen. It's an honor. So Instill Mindfulness is a nonprofit that was formed in 2016 with a mission to share mindfulness with people who would not otherwise be exposed to it, normally be exposed to it. So we're in a rural area like you are. It's not prevalent in this region, and it's something that all our teachers feel a deep connection with, and something we want to share. We've all benefited greatly from the practice, and when you benefit greatly from something, as you know, it's something you want to share. That's why you're a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. So our main program from the beginning has been in local public schools. So we've shared our mindfulness training program for faculty and staff, which you've completed, in 3 school divisions in our region, and we're about to start in another school division in the fall. Over, I think we've done 3 years now of this programming, and we started actually at the end of 2016, so the fall semester of 2016, working with students, and then we just realized that there are so many students that we can't reach them all. We just don't have those kind of resources. And 2, that if we're just coming into the schools once every week, 2 weeks, whatever, for maybe half an hour, it's not going to be reinforced for the students. So they're just getting this fun class every now and then. We figured, like, even if teachers were only giving them 5 minutes a day of this, it would be much deeper, especially if the teachers are trained in it, because then they're really sharing. If you're trained in this practice, you're really sharing it all the time. Even when you're not being mindful, that moment that brings you back to mindful awareness is a really important moment that is shared, whether you like it or not, with everyone around you. So that's when we realized it was really important to work with the faculty and the staff, because they're the ones that can actually share it with the students effectively, just by being themselves. You don't even need to be doing a practice with the kids. It's just the changes that start to take place in yourself as you become more mindfully aware, impact, like I say, everyone around you. I'm not sure if that answers your question there.
No, that's great. And I'm glad you brought up that I was part of the program. So for our audience, this is my work with Jamie really kicked off this idea that we should practice a mindful minute every day at school as an option. And you're right, I will say it has certainly impacted me, even in those simple moments where I'm realizing I'm not being mindful. It's not just simple mindfulness, but also being cognizant of those moments when I'm not being mindful. Can you tell me a little bit more about the science behind mindfulness?
Yeah. So to get really basic, I think most people now have heard about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So let's use that languaging. And this is really simple. I'm not a neuroscientist, and any neuroscientist that's watching this is going to probably cringe. So I just want to be clear. I'm trying to use really simple language, a really simple version of what's actually going on, which is incredibly complicated. We're dealing with the brain, right? So what the amygdala is a really important center of our brain. It's our stress center. And what it's geared to do is protect us. So if we're experiencing stress of any sort, it tends to kick in. So that's great. And it kicks in one of three ways typically: fight, flight, or freeze. It doesn't think, it just reacts. So it's the kind of thing that if you're walking in the woods and you hear say a loud crack above your head, you're going to want to be able to react immediately to that, probably jump out of the way, right? It's like, you don't think, you know that. You touch a hot plate, you don't think, it's just your hand gets off the hot plate. If we didn't have the amygdala, we'd be using our prefrontal cortex, which is, on an evolutionary perspective, that's like one of the newer parts of our brain, one of the much new, which what makes us human, essentially. This ability to think and to reason, and to be intelligent. All the stuff that you're doing at school is pretty much based here in the prefrontal cortex. So if you were just using that, which is the rational part of the brain that just thinks, you might be under that, you might hear that sound and you might look up and go, I wonder what that was. Wow, it looks like it could be something to do with that big branch. Maybe there's a crack in it. By the time you'd reason your way through it, bam, like you would have no ancestors. Without an amygdala, we would not be here because our ancestors would have died out a long time ago. So the amygdala is really important. I really want to stress how important it is. However, we don't need it that often, all right? Whenever you're experiencing stress, that's what's firing. And when it's firing, it kind of short circuits what's going on in here. So you're not able to think clearly. And we all know that, right? When you're experiencing stress, you don't think clearly. If that doesn't make sense to you, think about the last time you witnessed an argument between two people, both of their amygdalas are firing, and ask yourself, were either of them being completely rational? Were either of them making a whole lot of sense? And you probably noticed that no, like they weren't. And guess what? When you're in that argument, you're not either. You're not making a whole lot of sense. Your amygdala is firing and you're just reacting. So what we're doing with mindfulness practice is learning to respond by shutting down the amygdala response. We call it amygdala hijack. Cutting that off a little more quickly. Doesn't mean we don't react. It doesn't mean that we don't say stupid things and do stupid things when we practice mindfulness. Of course we do. Everybody does. What mindfulness is a practice to help mitigate that a little, so we do it less often and less severely. And also maybe in a better position to say, sorry, I messed up. My amygdala was firing. So that's essentially what we're doing, is utilizing practices to calm the amygdala, to shut down that stress response and get back to the prefrontal cortex. You were talking before this call, Stephen, about the whole the flipping your lid thing. So if you think of this as being your brain, and this here, I should put it here, that's your amygdala, right? It's right at the base of your brain here. And this is your prefrontal cortex. When the amygdala fires, you flip your lid and you've got no connection then with this. And this is what's running the show. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. So I guess there you go. How's that?
No, that's great. That was an analogy during our time together that really spoke to me. And even now, with the stresses of the job or of life in general, when I do take that step back, I'm trying to figure out at what level of flipping my own lid am I? And that has actually, just pondering that question has helped me discern a little bit more and bring myself back to a certain level of awareness of, not everything is a crack of a branch above you. I think there are a lot of stresses where you can stop, pause, notice, and reconsider the many options that you have for responding.
I would propose is close to 99% of stress responses are not cracks of branches above you. Like if you look back on your life, how many times has your life seriously been threatened? Like there are times, right? There are times you almost walked in front of a car. There are times, you know, that doesn't matter. And, you know, I know that a lot of people watching probably have previous military experience or whatever. Like there are times where like that amygdala is so important. And most of the time when you're in an argument, when you spill the milk, when, you know, all these little things that happen, when you're late, all these little things that happen, they're not life-threatening, but your amygdala doesn't know that. It's not a thinker. It just is trying to protect you. It notices you're stressed and it takes over. And it's at those times, and like I say, I'd say it's 99% of the time, that's when we need to be able to mitigate it and say, hey, settle down. Thanks for being there. And I want to be able to think this through. Thank you.
No, that's a good point that you brought up about the military. I don't believe I shared this with you, but my sister-in-law is in the U.S. Army, and she provides therapy services at Walter Reed, the Army hospital. And a lot of her therapy, now she's a musician by trade as well, so she does a lot of music therapy, but the work that she tries to push to our veterans is this idea that not everything has to be a reaction, and there is an impact on PTSD, certainly, as unfortunately many of our returning troops have to deal with. And what's interesting is that her services actually has a long waiting list right now. You know, it kind of like Instill Mindfulness. There's just way too many children than your resources can impact, and so she's working feverishly to help that. But yes, certainly from the mental health standpoint in the military, there is that connection. So can you tell me a little bit about mindfulness outside of the military and how that plays a role in early childhood, since we are a primary school, and how it can impact our teachers? And since so many of our parents are now thrown into this world where they are managing their children in their schooling at home, how mindfulness can benefit them as well.
Okay, and I do apologize for the sound of the fan behind me. I am in a greenhouse. It comes on intermittently. It'll be off again in a second.
Yeah,
so I hope you can hear me.
I can't hear it much. Yeah, I can't hear it much, so that's okay. I don't know if you can hear me though.
and thank you. It's a great question. So the key thing with mindfulness practice, and this is the thing that's hard for a lot of people when they're first taking it on to understand, like I can't tell you the amount of times I say, oh, we're working with this population or that population, and the person I'm speaking to says, oh yes, they really need that. Mm-hmm. It's like, my response is almost 100% of the times, I know I do. And this is what's most important about the practice. When you think that this child needs mindfulness practice, probably a sign that you could use some too. Or this person or that person or whatever. It's like, notice that in that moment that you're thinking that actually your amygdala is probably firing. You're probably experiencing a bit of a stress response. And so you're reacting to something, and your reaction is they need this. It's like, well, at that time, maybe I should start here. We often talk about, you know, if you're in an airplane, which I hope you're not having to do right now, that if there's an emergency and the gas masks come down, what are the instructions? The instructions are to put on your own gas mask first. Your own, is it gas mask, air mask, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oxygen mask, that's it. Gas mask doesn't sound good, does it? Oxygen mask first. And why is that? Yeah. Why is that? Because if you don't, you're both going to end up dead. Mm-hmm. Okay, or in a coma or whatever. It's like, if you want to be effective in a stressful situation, make sure you're taking care of this one first. Otherwise, you're just going to exacerbate things. You're just going to make things worse. So this is where we always start with the practice, is with this one. So that's why, one of the other reasons why we thought we'd work with staff and faculty. It's so important that they're modeling and showing how to respond rather than react, how to check in with yourself. And so can we do a quick practice?
Sure.
So I just want to give you an example now, as we're sitting here. Maybe we could do a starfish breathing. Have you done shared starfish breathing with everyone?
Yeah, so the children who are watching will be very familiar with it.
Okay, wonderful. Now, this is a practice we love doing with kids, but as we tell everyone we teach, it's like, make sure you're doing it too. And we also talk about this, like, even when you have your moment of silence at the beginning of class, it's like, how many times as a teacher is that not a moment of silence for you? Even if it's just your head screaming, I wish they would be silent. It's like, it's
Right.
not,
Like,
use that moment of silence. Make sure you have that moment of silence, even if no one else in the class is doing it. And trust me, the more that you get silent with that, the more they will too. But starfish breathing is simply, we just go up each finger, we breathe in on the in breath, in on the way up, and out on the way down. Let your finger follow your breath, not the other way around. In, out. And let's go back again. Now, I hope you were practicing that at home. If not, rewind, and give it a practice and just see what impact it has. I can speak from my perspective. I'm definitely in a slightly different space than I was before, and I wasn't stressed, but it just changes the nature of the space you're experiencing just in that time. And especially if things are a little crazy or hectic, this is an exercise we give to kids because it's so tactile that you can experience it. And just to understand, like, getting back to the neuroscience, what's going on here. Like, think about your mechanism or mechanisms for dealing with stress and for becoming unstressed. Think about what happens when you're stressed and what makes you more stressed. So when you're stressed, typically, what do you focus on?
the event,
Yeah, whatever's making you stressed. Does that make you more or less stressed?
focusing on that event is almost always takes me up.
Exactly. It escalates it, right? We all know this, right? So we get stressed, something stresses out, and then we think about it more, and it's like, and we really wind up. If you think about whatever mechanism you use to relieve stress, whether it's going for a walk or having a few drinks or watching TV or reading a book or going to sleep or whatever mechanism you use, every one of them is a version of taking your attention away from the thing that's causing stress and putting your attention into something that doesn't cause stress. This practice does that.
Mm-hmm.
This simple practice of going up and down 10 breaths takes your attention away from the thing that's causing stress and puts it into something that doesn't cause stress. That is the science of mindfulness right there. That's what we're doing. So what we're asking, what we're inviting people to do is to find mechanisms that do that. And the most simple one is just with the breathing, focus on your breathing. This is an easier way to focus on your breathing because it's tactile.
Right.
So it's great.
You'll find it fascinating. So many of our children have actually come up with their own tactile versions, which we have gladly shared on video, which has been fun because, you know, there's no one way to do it. As long as the end is achieved, which is being able to, you know, not skyrocket and get all worked up about that one event, but to really just kind of center yourself a little bit more and become more aware of your present moment right here, right now. So, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jamie. I really appreciate your words of wisdom and the connections you've made with mindfulness and all of the things that we've been doing as a school. And you just have a way of describing its purpose, how it's healthy in a way that I'm still working on. So thank you so much. I really very much appreciate it. And it just so happens that it's Mother's Day. And I don't know if you guys could hear on the screen as we were doing the starfish breathing, my children were downstairs screaming about something. And the one adult down there is my wife, who's acting in the capacity of the mom. And there are moments out there for all of the moms out there too, where mindfulness can help. So very, very, very fitting time for this interview. Thank you so much, Jamie. For everybody else, if you will go to our Principal Fort Zeller YouTube channel, we will be resuming the Daily Mindful Minute. Now, you could always come back to this video and learn a little bit more about mindfulness, the role it can play, how it can help your children, how it can help you, especially it can help your children, especially if you're helping yourself as well. And of course, if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me as well. All right, thank you very much, Jamie. Any last words?
Thank you, and rest assured that you're not the only one that's still learning this practice. We all are.
Absolutely. Work in progress.
Constant reminders every day.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.